to be here today. So happy that Deborah's just joining us, but having a little picture issue. Um, so I'd like to focus today's event is women's empowerment, and a focal point is conflict resolution, which is Deborah's area primarily. So that was why we chose that. Chat is wide open. We depend on chat to support us, but also to direct us in the most relevant ways, so we can really provide some quality takeaways. So while we're waiting for Deborah to come on the screen, uh, Beverly, why don't you share a little bit? I know women's empowerment is near and dear to your heart, and you've spent a lot of time in that area.
Yeah.
So uh, why don't we have you start a little introduction and first thoughts?
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is always exciting. Oh,
There we go.
Deborah, you got on.
There we go.
That's wonderful.
Well,
Yeah. Women's empowerment is basically my theme and my mission. Because what I do is, oh, Kelly's here. Hey, Kelly. I work with literally life management, if you want to put it in a little capsulated form. So women go through different struggles as we age, as we get older, life changes. And how do we manage that? Who are we? And we come across all kinds of difficulties with this identity, really, from being a mom, from being in business, for being a wife, a mother, all kinds. And there are an awful lot of losses, an awful lot of changes. And so basically, this is what I do. However, when I'm working with women or talking to women, because I do a lot of talking, okay, and I'm always going to watch it, it's not, it's empowering. It's letting people see that you are responsible for your own life. And Deborah is an expert here for conflict resolution. And I love that because women have a difficulty with conflict, let alone resolution. And it's the emotions that come in. And we
mhm.
have these conflicts all the time with ourselves, with our partners, in business. How do we act? How do we react? And what do we do? But the word resolution speaks really closely to my heart because when we have that resolution, it's not only that personal conflict. What it is how can we both agree, maybe agree to disagree, but make things better? So whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in our personal lives, and I've seen and worked with families, etc., with very difficult children and or partners in conflict, and they want a divorce and don't want a divorce, and the first thing is the D word, and let's resolve this. And that's where conflict and resolution comes in. It shouldn't just be emotional. We should be able to put things in place and be rational. And women have different conflict resolution skills. I'm sure you'll agree with that, Deborah, than men do. Men are going out full force and they have to calm that down because that doesn't always work. And women have a tendency of avoiding, perhaps quitting, perhaps diving in deep and saying, oh no, I'm not good enough. So, I'm just going to open that window and let the audience have ideas, put them in. What do you think? Because this is really about the audience. It's not only about us. We are just standing there to give you little triggers so that you're going to jump in and say, hey, I agree or I don't agree. And hey, is that conflict or is that conflict resolution? I'm going to pass that on to you, Deborah. Great to see you, by the way.
Yeah, well, welcome, Deborah. So happy to have you here. And Beverly and I kind of put together the conflict resolution focus, knowing it was your focus.
Mhm.
Really happy and honored to have you here today, and looking forward to your first views on women's empowerment and conflict resolution.
Well, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be back here again. And once again, a little connectivity issues, but we're here. And so I resolved my own conflict already this morning. I'm here. Yeah. You know, I've made conflict resolution sort of my passion in life, because I realized, you know, growing up myself, that, you know, people tend to react to what they see and what they hear without really processing or understanding what's going on. And so, you know, it's so important. And what I try to help people do is to, let's break it down. Let's chunk it down. What's going on here? Because we have internal conflict, you know, our own issues that oftentimes are embedded in how we were brought up and how we were treated. And we tend to carry those things into our adult life and oftentimes don't even realize it. But then there is conflict with others. And I have found throughout my career, it really helps to work with people to understand their basic communication styles, because I find a lot of conflict resonates in those differences in communication styles, which are worldwide, humankind worldwide, you know. And but then we start seeing, as Beverly, you've already said, these differences that do exist between males and females, and where our focus is, you know, our pacing, our timing. And I would agree, not all women, but there's a tendency for women to be more conflict avoidant and to bottle things up. And so that can create huge problems, both individually, but also in their relationships, both at work and at home. And so it really is a skill set that begs to be learned. We can muddle through life, so to speak, but just think about how much happier we could be if we knew how to resolve some of these, you know, smaller conflicts that then could prevent some of the bigger conflicts that occur.
I think that's just terrific. And you know, what attracted you to conflict resolution, Deborah?
Yeah, interesting question. I do use my family story a lot, because I grew up in a family of 9 kids. There were 6 older ones, and then the 3, literally, we were called the 3 little ones. And we were to be seen and not heard. And so because of the age gap between the older 6 and the younger 3, and we were to be seen and not heard, let's just say I developed some very astute observational skills. And watching these teenagers and parents, and my dad was in his own business, so I saw him engage in business dealings. And I just saw a lot of missteps and miscommunications, and fueled anger and hurts and disappointments and dashed dreams. And I was just a little kid. I remember, 7, 8, just watching these people going, oh my God, why aren't they talking? And what I've learned is it's not just talking. Talking is actually a subset of communication. And so we oftentimes talk at each other, but we don't communicate with each other. And communication is much more than just the verbal word. It's our ability to pay attention to where people are coming from. And so I really take it back to my roots in terms of just watching people in action and just amazed. And so I had my first psychology class in high school, and I thought, oh my God, there's a whole world out there where people actually talk about this stuff, because we didn't deal with feelings. We didn't know how to talk about feelings. And so as I emerged into college and so forth, I realized there's a whole world out there of expression and understanding and so forth. And I just found, my passions in that area to help people better understand themselves, but also understand the people in their lives and to have better relationships. And so it really is about not just, resolution is obviously the key, but it's about repairing, mending, restoring, better relationships. And I like to use Albert Einstein's quote, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. And so a lot of people will run away from each other when conflict occurs, but we actually want to come together and to with a mindset that, okay, there's an answer in here. What can we learn from this? How can we move forward differently? So it's all about where we are now and where do we want to go, and not staying stuck in the past. Yeah, it triggers us. It's important to understand that, but we don't want to keep living there. That's getting us nowhere.
No, that makes sense. And Beverly, I know your focus is women's empowerment, especially in the age group of 50 plus. Are you seeing changes between the younger women coming up and the older women over 50 as far as their ability to deal with conflict resolution better, or is it the same? Or
conflict resolution, as you were saying, really, Deborah, there's an emotional component in there.
Mhm.
And so whether you're young, whether you're older, it doesn't matter. You have to learn how to harness that and to come to terms with that. And without using the word conflict resolution, unless I was working really intensely with clients in real heavy spaces, and I have worked on many levels with people in witness protection, people in prison, you name it, okay? And for me, it's all about conflict resolution. And to get people to understand that there's no black and white here. Let's make a difference. And that would be whether you're younger or whether you're older. It's not the impulsivity. It's to calm it down. And I can give multitude of examples, and I'm thinking of one in particular because I was working in rehab, and there were a lot of people in there from Corrections Canada. And I'm talking about coming in to rehab where they really don't want to be there. They want to be out. And their next step would be into a halfway house. And talk of conflict resolution. Well, there are people there where a little trigger will ignite a conflict. And we can talk about these guys, or we can talk about anybody. But as you were talking, Deborah, you were talking about our past and our history and what can trigger us. And these people were triggered by just about everything. Well, in a rehab, they do their own cooking, they do whatever they do, and there's certain activities that they have to do. And we were, as clinicians, in the office, and we were just talking. It was a lunch break, and there was also this bang. And, the therapist got up, and I was one of the few women there because I love this stuff. Anyway, and they said, one particular guy who's very aggressive says, I'm going to go in there. And I said, well, no, let me. And then, no, don't go in there. Okay. Well, I said, no, let me go. He's my case. I want to go in. And I walked in. And when I walked in, he had this guy. They're big guys, okay? He has this broom handle, and he's lifted it up. And I just screamed, and I never do. I said, stop it. And they just turned around. They said, Mary Poppins? They used to call me that. Okay. And you know what? I laughed. They laughed. What we're talking about is we broke the tension. Okay. And then there was conversation. What are we talking about here? Are you going to go back to prison because of this stupidity? Okay. So when we are looking at arguments on any level, husband, wife, whatever it is, we lose track of what we really want to do here, which is resolve the issue. And you have to listen to what the other person is saying and respect where the other person is coming from. And so I don't think age really makes a difference. I think people have to understand that the conflict is within ourselves. And who knows what that fight was all about. It could have been that the coffee machine was dirty. I don't know. But the reaction was so overpowering that here was somebody that could have gone back to prison because of it. So, we have to think whenever we're in any conflict that what is it all about? Is it about me? Is it about what I want? And we can always, and I say always, come to some resolution where two of us can be happy if it's both resolved properly.
Well, those are good points and a great story, that people can relate to. And what I'm thinking when we're talking conflict resolution is it all starts to a point with conflict aversion, right? So you have to engage to get a resolution, and most people are adverse to it, right? Most people would rather suffer a little than pay a little, but it really creates the future trend and momentum, right? Once you start backing up and backing away, you're always going to deal with unresolved conflicts. And the more you can at least engage and understand what the conflict is, you may not resolve it, but at least you know what you're into and you're still a player. The question then becomes the time and the action steps. And again, that speaks so loudly for coaching, for therapy, for groups, for collaborations, because it's one person is not enough to be everything to that one person. But being aware and knowing there's opportunities for other people to help you may make conflict aversion less of an element. But before we go too far, we've got to recognize our beautiful audience. Kelly's here.
Hey, Kelly.
Today is Tremendous Tuesday because prior to the show, Carl Dakin had his show, which I was part of the audience. He had a wonderful gentleman who was talking about using not virtual assistants, but personal assistants, and he connects everybody around the world. What was interesting, he brought up, I think it was Ghana. If you're making $400 a year, you're middle class. So that gives you an idea of the value of money and the value of work to money. So thank you, Kelly. And by the way, Kelly is at 1:11 p.m., The Awesome Journey with Christy Howard.
Great.
And if you thought that was enough, following the show is Harvey Tuck, who does the franchise show. All four of us started in this show, and everybody guested for a while. And Kelly, Harvey, and Carl have the #1 recognized event already out of hundreds of them. And, this is kind of the same thing we're talking about, is something that looks daunting is because of either ignorance or unfamiliarity. But if you're with people who are familiar and have been up and down the mountain a few times, then it eases your fear because it's nice to have a guide when you're going up a new mountain. And I think that's what we're able to do. But more importantly, how many people can we help with a show like this that hundreds of people see this? And maybe not everybody's in deep trouble. There might be uncertainty, inability to make a decision, and then someone hears something, feels something, and makes that move. It's little things done right over time that build bigger scale things. So LinkedIn user, I assume it's Carrie. Thank you, Carrie. Danny's here. Danny's from England, just like Harvey Tuck. Haven't seen you in a while, but I've seen you. So great to have you back. Absolutely. The biggest problem with communication is the illusion it has taken place. Absolutely. Dennis, our heating and air conditioning friend for 49 years in Colorado, agree. Make it colorful and not simply black and white. We all need to learn more from others, and learning together is more fun. It takes the load off. When you can be 10% of 100% instead of 100% of one person. Mary pops in simply. Dennis is our joker here. Carl says, great show, Carl. most conflict resolution is about picking a winner instead of crafting a way to get back to the original goal or as close to it as possible. Oh, look who's here, Leslie Flowers. Great to see you, Leslie. Leslie has Think and Grow Rich on Fridays, which I highly recommend, and then has another show on Monday, which I won't say it if I don't know what it is, but I'll think of it and remember it because I've been to it. Great show too. Leslie says, okay, hello to us. Great to see you. Here's Carrie with a little bit more of a logo. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. Oh, Carrie's out of jokes today. That's a first. Well, there's always tomorrow, Carrie. Thank you for being here. More Carrie. And Carrie just want to say hello to Kelly. So swinging it back to you, Deborah, it sounds like there's a lot of nuance and finesse to conflict resolution. Probably one of the most important elements is making somebody comfortable as they approach it. So how do you make people kind of frame it and package it and present it in a way that looks more attractive than what they were thinking about it before they talk to you?
Again, great question, Don. And going back to what both of you and Beverly have said, is the critical importance of chunking it down. There really are, simple things that we can do to help us move along. But too often we become emotionally overwhelmed. And then and I like to bring in the neuroscience. I kept learning throughout my career and finally went and got my doctorate degree to understand the neuroscience behind what goes on. And so when we talk about, like in Beverly's example of where, that reactive behavior, that explosive behavior ready to take action, excuse me, it really is based in fear. Of fear and feeling threatened to self in some kind of way. But again, with the neuroscience and our natural brain chemicals kicking into gear as part of that, drive to survive, that natural reactive state, our brains are literally flooded with our natural brain chemicals to the point of where it interferes with our ability to assess and evaluate what's going on. And so we need that calming presence. Although Beverly entered, that challenging room with that stop it, but she brought it down, and it charged them out of their fight state because it was something unexpected. And so one of the things I like to, when people are dealing with either internal conflict or external conflict is that, first of all, what is this conflict about? What's the source of conflict? And help them sort of break that down. And that sort of decodes then, this mystery around conflict and put some of the logic back into it. Because when we involve the logic, we're actually redirecting the brain from that emotional state back up into the prefrontal cortex. And so these are where some very simple steps can help people calm down internally so that they can begin to focus on what's this about, and then how intense is this, because we can have low level conflict, we can have high level conflict, because then that will sort of dictate the steps we need to take in order to get to resolution. And I like what Beverly had to say as far as confrontation. So it's really about transforming confrontation into conversation. How can we talk about it rather than fight about it? And I'd like to share, if I may, because of the work that I do have a series of short videos and explanations about the 10 triggers to a fear-based mindset or a reactive emotional state of mind. And that's available on my website in the resources page. And so, and it dates back to childhood. What are those triggers? Are we fearing being abandoned? Are we fearing being rejected? Or have we always been criticized so that anytime somebody comes up with a point of difference, we feel we're being attacked? And so it's really important to start breaking some of that down and putting some realistic tones to that in the present so we can move forward differently.
Well, you make wonderful points there, Deborah. And what I'm always thinking, because that's where I'm at these days, is a conflict resolution show or event would cross all boundaries, because, I know in business, there's a saying, the bigger the people problems you solve, the more money you make, right?
Absolutely.
And at one time, I had 72 people under one roof working with me every day. And if it's not a conflict between me and them, it's a conflict between them and someone else or another group. So you had to really keep tightening up everybody's support for each other, respect for each other, and it becomes a cultural thing. And most people are in conflict because the culture is in conflict with their belief system, right? And it's because of making accommodations to fit in, whether that's a woman, whether it's a new person to a job, whether it's somebody in an organization, is how easy do you make the on-ramp for people to get to know each other. At my company, you know, there's always these celebrations when people leave a company, you know, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. We used to have a celebration when someone came into the company, right? So it was their first day, and my daughter worked with me for 8 years, and she loved doing all this recognition stuff. Is somebody would get a cake, and we'd all sing welcome. And it was a good start because, you know, it's all first impression. And hey, this is cool. I like being here. So the opposite of not being included is being always feeling safe and included. So Beverly, I know that goes a long way when people feel safe, when people feel welcome. How do you bring that mindset over?
Okay, I love that because I'm piggybacking on everything that both of you have said. And also going back to collaboration, I want to mention Leslie Flowers, if she's still here, because every week Leslie makes this really comprehensive list, and it takes time to do that. And that's of every LinkedIn Live that she knows of. She's really compiling this list, and I thank her because I have one on as well on Thursdays, Aging with Purpose and Passion. But Leslie, if you're there, I thank you because seriously, it's a lot of work, and she includes everybody. And so
you're right. I'll just interject really quickly. Mind Over Matter is Leslie's Monday show that just came to my mind, and that's an audio event. Think and Grow Rich is a video event on Fridays, and Leslie's kind enough to put all of my 5 shows in, so she follows. So this show has been promoted, and I think that also lends itself to everything we're talking about, is building a collaborative community that everybody's helping everybody, but collectively you gain by association, you gain through knowledge share and participation, because you don't want to be the only one in that restaurant or the only person in that audience. And, you know, I know every time I start, it's going to be Beverly, it's going to be Carl, it's going to be Kelly, it's going to be Harvey, it's going to be Leslie. Why? Because we travel together, right? Just like one comedian's done, they go to the next theater where the next comedian's playing, or the singer watches the singers, but they enjoy helping each other versus competing with each other. And I think that's the difference, is who are you fighting and why are you fighting? And that's where the conflict is, because sometimes conflicts go back so far, no one even remembered where it started or what it was. It's just that my side doesn't talk to their side and we don't invite each other. And
exactly.
So Beverly, back to you.
Yes, so I'm going to go back to our subject. And I'm going to go back exactly to what Deborah was saying, which is fear, okay? And when I gave that, you know, pretty well ultimate example, everyone that was in rehab or anywhere else is in fear of what is going to happen to the other person. And this is the same thing. All of us, we're wired. There is neuroscience behind what we do. And we are wired from our past. And not only from the past, we have a tendency of repeating that past based on all the examples that we have ourselves pretty well put into place. So if you're carrying that fear, the fear of abandonment or the fear of whatever it is, and you haven't even recognized that, and you feel attacked all the time, you more or less set it up to hear when you are attacked. And you are going to put it in your mind that that person is out to attack you. They don't get you. And you're building, you're not listening. You're already building something to say, something to attack back, something to hurt. And this is what we have to stop. We have to listen. What is the other person really saying? Often what we say is not what we mean.
Mhm.
You know, when people used to come into my office, I'm all online now, and they always, yeah, how are you? Fine. And I'd say, come on, you're talking to me now, okay? You're looking terrific, don't get me wrong, but I look at the eyes, I look at all kinds of other things. And yeah, we go on our daily lives picking up pieces and we're fine, we're fine, we're fine. And that little coffee sink can be a reaction from so many other things. And the first reaction is attack, and that's the conflict.
Mhm.
So if somebody is volatile, it's not to react back to the volatility because no one is hearing anyone anyway. When two people are screaming at each other, who's listening? So it's to break that. And that's what both you and I, Deborah, we do that. It's like, okay, stop. And I did that dramatic move. It's true. All I did was walk in. I was very calm, by the way. I wasn't fearful of attacking these big people. Are you kidding me? And then again, I'm not a big person. They called me Mary Poppins. Are they going to fight Mary Poppins? Of course not. Okay. And the police use this in conflict resolution all the time. There'll be this big guy and this little girl that could probably kill the big guy, but she looks much calmer and smaller. Okay. It's so when you get the fear out of it, why are you angry? Why? And in the animal kingdom, you find these two aggressive animals. If one is bigger, the other one will go away. Smart animal, right? With the human, yeah, we don't care. Okay. I am going to get you. It doesn't matter if I'm 75 years old and this guy is 35. You hit my car, whatever it is, right? It's like, no, calm down, people. It's not about the sound of the voice. And we have to realize that when we are in conflict with ourselves, one way of listening to that is make a list of what you're feeling. And not a little list. Start with the anger and work your way down the list. It's down the list that you'll find the answer, not on the top.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we have to see. The conflict is always within ourselves. Why do we want that? What is going on? And then we come to a resolution. And is it easy? Oh, what can I say? Is anything easy? No. But you're not in a rush to find the arrangement and the agreement. And that's what you also have to see. Nobody is rushing. Just relax. Let's find an answer. And
well, I think you make wonderful points there. And everything is not an absolute. Everything is a degree to a point. And I think your anticipation and expectation of the result is important.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get into something, what can you accomplish? Right? If you can't get it done, maybe you can get it understood a little bit better. Or maybe it's like, well, let's agree that we're this part and we've got all these other areas to work on, but we did something. So if you honor somebody by giving them credit, right? And I think a lot of it is ego and pride. People don't want to admit they're wrong, don't want to admit somebody else is right, don't want to take advice. I mean, if you look at it, the game is between you and yourself first, because how you walk into a conflict has a lot to do with how you might resolve it, right? If you're weak, timid, anxious, fearful, it puts you at a disadvantage. If you say, hey, I've had time to think, And now I realize, right? So, if you couldn't go through it through a direct course, maybe you can go through it with an indirect course. But I think partnering is so important, because once you both admit individually, we're not going to get this done. It's only going to happen if we agree to agree instead of agree to disagree. And at a certain point, you got to ask yourself, what is really important? And most conflicts are resolved because what was important to you means nothing to me, and vice versa. I'll give you plenty of that because I don't care, but I need this. And it becomes an exchange. And sometimes it becomes a gift, right? Just to get it over with, I'm going to take care of it, right? I mean, look at people when they have to fight over a bill after lunch. Let me pay. No, it's mine. Are you sure? And when someone says, are you sure? I say, no, take care of it then. You're right. I'm not sure. I mean, so, it's funny. It always reminds me, me and my wife were great caregivers to my mother. And when she came to the house, I said, here, Ma, here's what we're going to work through. Is whatever you ask me, I'm going to tell you my opinion. The second time you ask me, it's yes. Right? So if you're going to get whatever you want, I just want to get an opportunity to kind of say what I think or feel, So Deborah, now that we're laughing.
Well, by laughing, we've just changed the chemistry in our brain, quite frankly, and so humor is important. Yeah. I want to share a couple of things. Beverly started talking about, starting with anger, and I, again, what I've done is I've taken sort of the 4 basic categories of emotion, but there are a myriad of subsets of emotions. Like, for example, if somebody said, well, Deborah, you're angry. It's like, well, no, I'm not angry, but I am frustrated. And frustration or irritation, et cetera, are part of that family of anger. And so it is important to, chunk it down again, break it down. What am I really feeling here? So a lot of times people don't identify or are unable to articulate what they're actually feeling and why they're triggered. And so that's where I love, engaging with people about through conflict coaching. I am a mediator, but mediation is not always the answer. Sometimes we need to know ourselves better and understand the emotional, really smart intellectually, but we may be pretty dumb actually emotionally. And so, we benefit from that. And so with conflict coaching, then I that's where we work to break it down into, what is this about and what can we do about it? And here's my phrase I always like to ask people, because we can get defensive. Well, this isn't me, it's that person. We're quick to find fault in the other person. And I said, well, whether or not you're right or wrong, how's that working for you? And I always get a sort of a wry smile that comes to their faces. It's not. Okay, opportunity to do something different. Let's start exploring. Okay. And Beverly, I actually have an acronym for FINE. It's false information needing exploration.
Perfect.
Fine. No, I'm sorry. That doesn't really cut it. Let's talk further here.
Exactly. Absolutely perfect. Yes. No.
So
John.
let me just introduce some of the audience. I'll bring it right back. Harvey's show, like I say, starts pretty soon. He says, this is a little tricky here. Like to reminds me of the Baz Luhrmann song, the lyric, the race is long, and in the end, it's only you and yourself with a good song. And, at the end of the day, you come back to yourself. And, I think there's a part that says, why not be the better person? Mm-hmm. What is really important to you that you're defensive and vigilant about? And what are the stuff that's like potato, tomato? Everybody's got an opinion, but who really cares? And if someone cares more about it than I do, then it's theirs to enjoy. Dennis comes back with agree humor is an important part of humans. With that, Beverly.
Well, to get back after Dennis.
Well, we started the laugh cycle here, and that's what you get.
Yeah, well, the laugh cycle is good. Okay, it's always good. And it definitely relieves conflict resolution big time. It's the understanding phase. And what you also mentioned, Deborah, was emotional intelligence. Um, Women have a tendency, and it sounds like a stereotype, but it's actual fact, that women will slow down. We do not attack as quickly as men do.
Mhm.
For some reason, this doesn't come from me. Okay. And we can attack differently. Oh boy, we can be real evil. Okay. But that is something we have to always look at. What is our style? What is our communication style? And Deborah, you mentioned the emotions. Many people don't understand how many hundreds of emotions that we feel. And if anyone wants to do a little soul searching, just go on the internet. There are these charts, and there's even this circle of emotion thing. And it's even done with emojis, because I think emojis are absolutely great. There's so many little emojis that are all our little feelings that we're not even in touch with. And he's quite saying, happiness, I'm happy. Well, there's so many different degrees of that. And the same with anger, and the same with everything else. We're not in touch with that. I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm happy, I'm sad. We keep it simple. But if we really dig down, we start understanding ourselves. And when we understand ourselves, we can get to the root of all conflict, because it all starts with us. So it's like, what am I after? And the point is, when we are angry, when we are upset, when we are in conflict, we're not thinking, we're reacting. And when we react, we lose it, because we're not thinking same thing. Because what you have to do is stop and not react. This is where sitting with ourselves, this is where calming ourselves down, this is where meditation comes in. And and slow down. This is note to self. When I have something to do and I know I have to get it done, me, like most people, will want to get it done. Whereas if I'm stressed, I do say to myself, stop, relax, go away, do it later. And I do that very often. I do follow my own advice. Well, it's the same thing with conflict resolution. If you're escalating your emotions and you cannot control them, the way you give time out for the kid? Do it for yourself. Come back later. And then when the other person has calmed down, when you have calmed down, talk about it. But the key is, don't forget it. Because it's going to come back later to haunt you in, I don't know, tomorrow, next week, who knows what, with the cup in the sink, whatever it is, right? The conflict is within yourself. If the drama is too deep, you can't settle anything.
Mhm.
So that's the key, I believe, to anyone who starts to feel that we have emotions that are out of control. And women may not be expressing those emotions, but they may feel them, and they may hold the resentment, and it may come back in a different way. And if it's a man and he happens to attack, it could be the other way around. I'm stereotyping. But what it is really is to understand, what's this all about? Why is there so much drama? Let's talk about it. Let's understand. Let's be quiet. Let's calm down. But don't calm the other person down. Calm yourself down first.
Yeah, I think that goes a long way, because I know even when I was in retail and an irate customer would come to the counter and they could be loud and obnoxious, the slower and the calmer I spoke would reduce in other words, if you start whispering, they start coming down to it. If you start raising your voice, it elevates that. The other element is context. Understand who you're in front of. I know when I got into situations, some people were really aggressive and tough, and they were different to deal with, not harder. Because then you had to kind of say, well, here's how far we can go with this. And after that, it's unacceptable. but it's also knowing you're going to get supported. Because if you have a culture or an environment that doesn't promote negative behavior towards each other, you're hurting yourself when you're hurting someone else. If you know you can get away with it, or it's even encouraged, you want to show that you can get every bit of it for yourself. So I think there's a unselfishness that one has to deploy, and also reputational, right? Because if I act like this, the word's going to get out. Now with social media and shows like this, it doesn't take much for someone to be put off, and now they can bring it beyond the room it started in. And the thing is why be bad when you can be better? You know, why not be the best you can be, as long as there's no threat or anything. And I think the more you stand up for yourself, the more you're proud of yourself. And sometimes it wasn't that you won, but you went the distance. You know, you answered the bell, you know, you hung in there, and there's always hopefully tomorrow. And that's where you got to be more forgiving of yourself, accepting yourself, because you did the best you could with what you had to work with. And I think if people realize that, they don't fall into a hole. They actually have the motivation to rise up. So Deborah, lot to talk about here.
Oh boy, yeah. I'm trying to, oh, where do I start here? You know, there are a couple things I want to point out though. And Don, your example of when you were in retail, you know, that is a perfect illustration of the neuroscience, again, the mirror neurons. You know, we reflect what we see and we respond according to what we're presented with. And so if we change that dynamic, like you said, lowering your voice and appearing calm, we're immediately going to have a calming effect on the other person. It may not be like that, but you know, it will, you know, you've got to maintain your composure. And so I like to say, you know, when we're in the heat of the moment, that's where we want to be, you know, have courage to disengage from the heat of the moment and take that opportunity to calm down so that we can re-engage in a calmer moment. And so that, you know, by stepping away, you can actually feel empowered, you know, that, okay, I don't have to go where that person's going. I can choose to take care of myself. And yeah, a little selfish in that regard, but I can choose to take care of myself because I don't want to go there. I don't want to show up like that other person's showing up because this is my reputation. This is, you know, I just don't want to be there because I'm harmed by engaging in that intense behavior. And neuroscience wise, you know, and I want everybody to sort of play with this in, you know, coming hours or days, and that, you know, if you feel triggered, you know, pay attention to that, but then watch how you shift over the next 24 to 72 hours. Because when we get triggered, it can actually take up to 24 to 72 hours, depending upon the trigger, for the physiology of our brain and our body to settle down to that pre-trigger state. And all of that affects then our human brain, our executive brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is where our intelligence is, and we don't function well. And just stop and think about that. You know, after you've had a you know, triggering event or an intense exchange with somebody, we're emotionally upset. We're emotionally hijacked for a while until the physiology can calm down and we can get back to a more, again, the prefrontal cortex. One of the things I do with people is I like to ask them, well, not necessarily with the context we just talked about, but, you know, what are 3 words that sort of capture, you know, what you've been experiencing in this relationship, for example, with another person? And, you know, how's that working for you? It's like, well, not, you know. Okay, so what are 3 words for how you'd like this relationship to look, or how you'd like to see yourself show up? Oh, okay. Then let's work for that. Let's work towards that. Let's identify steps and skills you might need in order to That's who you want to become. You don't want to stay stuck in what you have been, but we're moving forward. And so that little shift from 3 words from the past still ties into the emotion. But when we start talking about 3 words for the future, we're actually helping our brain shift back up to the prefrontal cortex, out of the emotional area. And now we're feeling sane again. We're feeling calm, and we can now do something different.
That's beautiful, because I think it really makes it a lot more comprehensive an approach. And again, looking back at situations where I did have some conflicts, I think stating your intention when you get started helps too, right? So take the irate customer. If you say, hey, listen, Jim, or whatever, I'm here to satisfy you. I'm here to make you happy. I just need your help in order to do that, right? So if you already state that, your goal is to give them what they want. And the other thing is, how much are we talking about here, right? If it's a $5 item, just talking to you isn't worth $5. and then it's what's the energy you're going to draw from me and replace with your energy that I'm going to approach the next person from you with that they don't deserve. And it's really quick making calculations. I mean, you go to the grocery store, you buy a lettuce, right? But if it was $100, you wouldn't touch it. Same lettuce, right? And at a certain point, you say, well, what's my time worth? What's my mental attitude worth? And I got a store full of customers here, right? So you automatically win, because it's my store, it's your visit. And you just start to realize, that's why I used to tell all my people, you get one irate customer and you had 100 good customers, and you talk about the irate customer when the day's over. And why don't you look at the 99 winners and just look at that as a way of doing business? So I think when you just say it's about it and not about me, right? Then that changes the dynamics. It's like, I'm here just to fix things and get things back on their feet, not to change people. And I think people aren't changeable, especially in the moment of anger, emotion, frustration. And, actually you say, I feel sorry for you. I definitely wouldn't want to feel like you're feeling now. What can we do? To fix this. And in most cases, it's like, hey, even a bad customer who you turn happy refers you to business, right? So, and it's going to happen anyway. So Beverly, we got a few minutes left.
Well, gosh, you said so many things, both of you, again, as usual. And then it's like, where do I tie it in? Where I took a couple of little notes. You said it, Deborah, from the very beginning. Yes, you need a break. And that's where the old adage is, don't do it, sleep on it.
Yeah.
And see what it's like in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay? If people could only remember that, that should be a wonderful takeaway just for this session. When you're really over the top, take a look at it. You may be tired, you may be hungry, there may be other physiological things going on, you may have had a good day. Put it to rest, okay? And another thing that you said, Dawn, that also speaks to me, how much is that worth? Now, in the context of a store, it could be a $5 item. It could be like a worthless thing. But it's the same in an argument, If he wants something or she wants something and you really don't want, how much is this argument worth? Do you have to get into a fight for that? Is it really necessary? And very often you're going to kick back and you may think, well, my mother always did it. If you start looking back in history, it's like, oh, I don't believe I did that. History has a way of repeating ourselves. And that goes on and on, particularly in conflict. It's like, this is the way I react. This is the way I should react. It goes on overdrive. And because we only have a few minutes, another takeaway that's so important is, don't throw out judgments. Don't throw out criticisms. Don't throw out labels. When you're doing that, that's not the way to fight, okay? Because anything you say can't be taken away. And people remember. and it's hurtful. And it's not worth it. Even if you say, well, I didn't really mean it and it was only a fight, you already said it.
Mhm.
So don't say it, like what you said, Dawn, was, how much is that really worth? Is that worth a rip roaring fight? No, because nobody's listening. Sleep on it, talk about it in the morning. And if it is worth it, definitely talk about it and understand the other person's side. Where are they coming from? You know, and
Well, and
on your
that,
side as well, and come to the.
well, well, that's a wonderful strategy because a lot of times you just want to share something with the person, right? So if someone says, "Can I have a refund?" Yeah, you're going to get a refund, but I just want to share something with you, right? And everybody knows themselves where they are. When you go to TJ Maxx and return something, you have an expectation, right? And when you try to get something for nothing, you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if someone allows you to do that, you don't really think you fooled them. You kind of feel sorry for yourself that you had to go through that for an extra whatever. But
Mhm.
from the person who's granting it, it shows evolution. You've evolved. How many times you say, if this would have happened 5 years ago, this was my normal approach, and now I take it this way. I got to know this individual who changed his life by just changing one word into another. And he told me my whole world changed when I turned frustration into fascination. Right.
Ah,
So before somebody would cut me off and I'd be like after him and honking my horn and being crazy. And now when that happens, I say, boy, that's fascinating. What kind of person would do that?
yeah.
And I'd reflect on it versus act on it. And sometimes it's just a shift of where you're at, and also saying to yourself, is this worth all the time and trouble?
Mhm.
People
Mhm.
say it's always the principle and not the money. No, it's the money first and not the principle when they say that, right? Because if it wasn't there, it wouldn't be there. Well, Deb, we're coming up to the top of the hour. I'm so glad we had a chance to smile,
Yeah.
laugh, and I think that goes a long way towards conflict resolution because it's contagious, right?
Right.
Into a room and two people are laughing and falling over themselves, you start laughing without even knowing what it is they're laughing about. So it spreads. What can you say? Finishing up, final thoughts on the conversation. I think we did a thorough uh, job here of going from soup to nuts and A to Z.
If I may, I'd love to share a quote by Maya Angelou, and I use it a lot when I'm working with people. People will forget what you did. People will forget what you said, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Well, and that's so important. And I think everybody feels like they're paying their dues when they're doing something for other people, when they're of service, when they know maybe this will change the way they react to their family conflicts or work conflicts by how we were able to do it. And they use that as a model or a great example for themselves. So, Beverly, we got a minute and 52 seconds left. What do you think? This was a great show. We had a chance to not only follow women's empowerment, but really find a topic and a focal point for
Right.
Deborah that she's right into.
Sure. But slanting it into women, it actually is women empowerment because we are, we fight differently. I'm going to be right out there and say it. Okay. We don't go out and we're not necessarily as aggressive, but we do this differently. The fact is that we have to, whether you're a woman, whether you're a man, understand that we can be very hurtful, that we really are not listening 3/4 of the time when we are angry, when we're upset. And so we have to understand ourselves, and we do not have to be manipulative. That's huge.
Mhm.
Because when we go inside ourselves, very often, instead of really explaining what we want, we can manipulate. I'm doing that on a woman's thing. This has not been researched, but I see this a lot. That there can be an underlying way of getting what you want. And it's not about winning. It really isn't. It's really about a mutual arrangement with two people that both feel satisfied that they have achieved an end result. And that can be in a relationship, and that can be in business, and that can be anywhere. Nobody has to be aggressive. Nobody has to scream and yell. And you can always get what you want. I truly believe that. And they say, yeah, but that's you, Bev. You know how to manipulate. No, I do not. Or I know the strategies. Yes, I do. But the bottom line is they're all out there for everyone. And goodness knows, Deborah and I covered a heck of a lot of them
Mhm.
just in this hour. And I would say take a look on the internet and see what all that wheel of emotion is about. You may be really surprised that you don't have to trigger yourself right up to anger. So, on
Right.
that said, I hope everybody has a really empowered week.
Well, thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Beverly. I think what we really have come down to, or has distilled, is a communication strategy,
Yeah.
right? Is everybody has a voice. Once everybody's voice has a place and a stage of being able to express oneself, now you're much more inclined to resolve conflicts and maybe even get to the point where you don't get into conflicts,
Mhm.
right? Where you avoid them by being the better person, by giving things away that you know aren't worth holding on to, and building goodwill. And
Mhm.
goodwill goes a long way, because if you help somebody, they're less inclined to want to take something from you, as opposed to they don't know you and they may never know you. So with that, come back tomorrow. Tomorrow is career transition event. Jason Gerardo is here, and maybe another person may be here. I want to thank the audience. What a beautiful group that comes here every day. And I learned so much from this, because it's a way of throwing what you have into on the table and mixing up what everybody else is and coming out with a better hand. So thank you again, Deborah. Thank you, Beverly. Thank you.